You know that feeling when you get into a conversation about gender and it just feels like it's going nowhere? Like you and the other person are speaking completely different languages? It is, for sure, one of the most intense and confusing debates of our time. And today, we're going to try and figure out why. So that's the big question we're diving into. And we're going to explore a really interesting idea. What if the root of all this conflict isn't what we think it is? What if it's not actually about politics or even biology, but about the very words we're using to have the conversation? Okay, so to get started, let's kind of map out the battlefield, right? It's usually presented as this massive divide, a cultural landscape where finding any common ground just feels totally impossible. I mean, you've seen it. People dig their heels in, armed with these super deeply held beliefs. And that space for any kind of nuance just seems to get smaller and smaller with every conversation. And the result? Way more heat than light. And what happens is this really complex debate often gets boiled down to just two opposing camps. Two positions that seem like they can never, ever be reconciled. And those two positions are pretty clear-cut, right? On one side, you have the view that gender is fluid. It's a subjective, internal experience that's not just reducible to your anatomy. And then on the other side, you've got the view that gender is fixed, a stable biological reality, kind of that you are what you are idea. So these positions feel pretty solid, don't they? But what happens when we start to really push on them? Well, it turns out that both of these seemingly concrete views, they actually have some pretty big flaws. And this is really the crucial question. What if the reason this whole debate is so stuck is because both sides are trying to build their arguments on really shaky ground? Let's dig into that. Okay, so let's take the fluid view to its logical extreme. If gender is totally subjective, completely unique to every single person, then what does the word even mean anymore? It kind of risks becoming this personal label that has no shared understanding, which basically makes it useless as a concept we can talk about together. But, the exact same problem pops up on the flip side. The moment you try to create this perfectly rigid, fixed definition of gender, whether it's based on social norms or biology, you immediately start running into exceptions. The rules start to feel arbitrary, and all these cracks begin to show in that supposedly solid foundation. So if both positions are kind of built on shaky logic, why do people hold on to them so tightly? Well, the answer might have less to do with politics and more to do with psychology. The thinking goes something like this, that political intensity isn't just about a simple disagreement. It's actually a powerful reaction to this deep, deep discomfort we feel when we're dealing with a concept that just refuses to be put in a neat little box. We're basically trying to force order onto something that's naturally ambiguous. And this gets to a really key concept for understanding the whole debate. When we're faced with the messy, ambiguous nature of gender, our minds might instinctively throw up these rigid walls, these really strong political stances to protect ourselves from all that uncertainty. We're defending against the discomfort of an idea that just won't fit. So this brings us to a really crucial point. That discomfort we were just talking about, what if at its very core, it isn't social or political at all? What if it's linguistic? What if the problem is the very tool we're using to have this conversation in the first place? Okay, this might seem like a bit of a random detour, but just stick with me. To make this really abstract idea about language a little more concrete, we're going to use an analogy. Let's talk about a totally different word, punk. So here's your basic dictionary-style definition of punk. Seems straightforward enough, right? It's a genre of rock music. But then you think about it for more than like a second, and you realize it's way more complicated. Is it just a music genre, or is it an aesthetic? The leather jackets and safety pins. Is it a political stance, all about anti-authoritarianism, or that whole do-it-yourself ethos? The thing is, it's all of those things, and sometimes they even contradict each other. And that leads you to this impossible question, right? So, what makes someone a real punk? I mean, if someone loves the music but doesn't have the look, are they in? If someone has the politics but they secretly listen to pop music, are they out? There's just no single, neat answer that everyone can agree on. And this is exactly where the analogy connects back to our topic. The word gender works just like the word punk. It's not one single simple thing. It's a whole cluster of different associations. Biology, social roles, internal identity, how you express yourself. Trying to cram it into just one of those boxes, you miss the whole point. And this is the real aha moment. This absurdity, this difficulty we have defining gender, it's not a bug in our thinking. It's not a failure on our part. It's actually a feature of how language itself works. It's just how language struggles to grapple with these big, complex, messy human concepts. The confusion is built right in. Okay, so if we accept this new way of looking at it, that the problem really is one of language, how does that change how we might approach the whole conversation? This is probably the biggest takeaway of all. The intense conflict we see all around us isn't just about social disagreement. It's actually a symptom of a much deeper problem. The tool we're using, our language, is fundamentally limited. It just can't perfectly capture the reality we're trying to describe. So, what does a new approach look like? Well, for starters, we can just acknowledge that our words are imperfect tools. Second, we can be a little more skeptical of our own neat and tidy answers. Doubt our own certainty a bit. And third, and maybe most importantly, we can try to shift our goal. Instead of trying to win the argument, maybe we just try to understand what the other person is trying to say. And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about. If language itself is the problem, then can we find a better way to talk? Is it possible to find a more nuanced way to discuss these complex human experiences, one that goes beyond the battle lines our current words have drawn for us?